What is going on out there, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot for Watch Along Wrestling. Hopefully everyone is doing well and staying safe. It is a very exciting time here on Watch Along Wrestling. I'm excited to be here with each and every one of you. Today I am joined by old friend of the YouTube channel here, Alex Dorio from the Talking Taker podcast, one of my favorite podcasts of all time. And Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, Tommy. Man, I was excited to be back with you on YouTube. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but man, I got the text from you about this idea, and I couldn't be more excited to talk about this here tonight.
Yeah, Alex, you have an incredible Royal Rumble display, and really your entire really well done.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I put a lot of work into it, so
yeah,
I appreciate the compliment.
And especially comparatively with my backdrop of this white wall, I gotta get a little better with mine. But
it's the minimalist look, you know.
Exactly. But it's been a while. Alex, you joined me. I think I want to say the first time was in 2019 for the 15th anniversary of WrestleMania 20. I had reached out to you kind of creepily, I think, through Instagram DM originally.
Okay.
I think you put up some pictures from WrestleMania 20. I saw that you guys had gone to the show. And I knew I had this show planned, so I was like, hey, I hope these guys are willing to come on. You were. And here we are. 4 years later, I consider you a very good friend. This is great to have you back on.
It's crazy how time flies. You know, we've actually even been lucky enough to meet in person, and sort of that same thing. It was kind of random, but I happened to be in New York for a few days, and I was trying to rack my brain if anybody I knew in New York. I was like, I think Tommy is. Let me just give him a shot. And I sent you a DM on Twitter, and we ended up having dinner with our wives and having a great time. So yeah, absolutely, friends online, friends in real life, and we often text about just random wrestling stuff nowadays, and even just regular life stuff. So man, I enjoy it. Consider you a friend. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember that day I had told my wife, I was like, hey, do you want to come meet a buddy of mine in the city? She's like, who? I was like, my friend Alex. I met him through like wrestling YouTube and podcasting. She like paused for a second and was like, all right, sure, why not? So there we were on our way to Manhattan, and we had a great time. So I've been listening to your podcast, Talking Taker, for a very long time now. You guys have went through the entire, every pay-per-view match of The Undertaker throughout his entire career?
Absolutely. All 30 years of them. Every single one. We have an episode dedicated to it, and we actually completed that in March of 2001. So 2 years ago, we took about 3 or 4 months off, and then we came back, and now Travis White, my co-host, we do an episode every month now. So, and we used to do them every week going through the career. We did 4.5 years worth of that, but now we've been just coming back every month with a bonus episode. Sometimes we look back like for the anniversary of a big match. So last month in January, we did the 25th anniversary of Royal Rumble 98, of that casket match between Undertaker and Shawn. So sometimes we do things like that, or sometimes we do totally random stuff. Like we did a review of the Undertaker in the WWE Scooby-Doo cartoon, Scooby-Doo and the Curse of the Speed Demon, which he has a starring role in and is absolutely as ridiculous as it sounds. So just trying to explore every aspect of Taker's career now.
Yeah, it's because of that podcast that I checked out the WWE Scooby-Doo movie. I couldn't believe it.
I'm sorry?
Available. And it was definitely an interesting, weird that WWE had this period of time where they were just doing these because I remember
there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a bunch. And Scooby-Doo was actually at WrestleMania 30 Access. And my wife and I met him. There was no line. He had less line than the biggest jobber in WWE at the time.
No.
We were there and thrilled to be there with him. And but yeah, that's really cool that WWE has that strange crossover appeal. And that was a fun one that you guys did there, going through that whole deal.
Pretty ridiculous. Yeah, very fun.
But with Royal Rumble season here upon us, decided to do something a little fun here with Alex, and had asked Alex to compile a list of his top 10 Royal Rumble matches. Now, Alex, I hope you, and I think you and I are on the same page. These are the Royal Rumbles themselves, right?
Yes, that's what I've got, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So maybe next year we'll get back and do non-Rumble matches at the pay-per-view.
Okay, that could be fun too.
Or championship matches at Royal Rumble. Everyone knows that one would easily, number one would be Brock Lesnar versus Hardcore Holly from Royal Rumble 2004.
Yeah. Or I was saying Bobby Lashley and Test, I think, for the ECW title, I think in 2007. That'd be right up there, too. Yeah, for sure.
I always appreciated that about the Rumble, that if because they had the Rumble, they were like, we don't really care too much about these other matches. As long as we've got the Rumble, we know people will order it. So
yeah,
whatever. And
you give these guys title shots that would never get them. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, it was interesting. One of the things in looking at the Rumble, I guess before we even get to our top tens, what are some of your earliest memories of the Royal Rumble?
I think the first one I remember, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say it's going to be on my list, because it's probably on your list too, is the 92 Rumble. I won't say where it is on my list, but I'm guessing it's probably on both of ours. And that's honestly the first one I do remember watching. I got into wrestling in 91 when I was about 5 years old. That was my first memories of watching wrestling. And so I was just I wasn't really following storylines or anything, but I just watched it on TV. I'd go rent the tapes from the store, any wrestling tapes I could find. And I remember Flair in that Rumble. And it's such a weird memory, but I have blonde hair, and especially when I was a kid, it was like almost like Ric Flair's hair. It was almost bleach blonde. It was natural, but it was basically that same color. And I remember watching it and saying to my mom, I guess I have to be a Ric Flair fan, Mom, because he has hair like I do. And I was so disappointed and dejected about that because, he was the bad guy. I was like, I don't want to be a Ric Flair fan, but I guess I kind of have to be. And she says, no, you don't, son. You don't have to like him if you don't want to. I was like, oh, okay. Thank goodness. But that's honestly my first Rumble memory that I could think of.
Yeah, for me, I'd say it went back 1 year before that. Royal Rumble 19. I probably start. So my dad was a huge fan, like a crazy big fan. So when I was itty bitty, he'd watch anything he can get his hands on with me, and I think that's why to this day I'm still so into wrestling, because he kind of ingrained in me. But the first real memory I had was Christmas 1990, getting all the Hasbros and all that. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. And then the first tape of a pay-per-view, because we didn't have cable and pay-per-view in early 91. We got it for actually WrestleMania 7. But Royal Rumble 1991, my dad's friend had ordered Rumble 91, and the next day my dad gave me a tape, and we watched the Rumble 91. And for the longest time growing up, the Royal Rumble that's what I considered to be the granddaddy of them all, was the Royal Rumble, because you had so many people in there. So even though at some point you get a title match at WrestleMania, I thought Royal Rumble was the grand, probably until WrestleMania 2000, when they did the whole WrestleMania all day long. And that's when I realized, okay, WrestleMania is their flagship. But for me, the Rumble was the most fun growing up. 30 guys, the whole family, gathered around the TV doing the 10, 9, 8 countdown. And it was the most rewatchable as well. I feel as a kid, I'd rewatch these things hundreds of times. And even if it wasn't the greatest match, it was still so fun and easy to get through.
Exactly, man. I agree with you on all those points. It is undoubtedly the most fun wrestling match of the year to watch with people. Wrestling's always more fun when you've got a group of people there to watch it with you, but especially so the Royal Rumble. And in starting in college, we did the Royal Rumble pools and pick'ems, and we'd have a party with 7 or 8 people there, everybody getting to draw their numbers, and it just gives you that much more to root for and cheer for in there. And you talked about figures. This is the most fun to do with action figures too.
Yeah.
Is to do a Royal Rumble with your figures. I don't know how you did it. I would just have the tub of figures right there, and I would close my eyes and grab one. Whoever was next, that's who drew number 4, number 5 in the Rumble. I would do it totally random. It was so much fun.
And then you wouldn't even know who was coming in next. It was the most fun part about Rumbles. I completely loved it. And for me, because the Rumble was always my favorite, a lot of people always say the Royal Rumble to WrestleMania is the best time for WWE, but I always think it's first Raw of the year to WrestleMania best time, because I think the Rumble hype is a lot of fun. I think back to 99 with Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon, and doing the whole catch that chicken and the training for the Royal Rumble. That stuff was a lot of fun. Or even 2013, John Cena. I'll never forget. John Cena does this promo that everyone panned as being so corny and terrible, where he went around to all these members of the audience and was like, what do you plan on doing? What what do you usually do over the weekend? And he finds this girl, and the girl says she usually goes out with her friends. And then this little boy says he usually plays video games. And he's like, that's what they typically do on the weekend, but not this weekend, because this weekend is the Royal Rumble. And like got everyone all pumped. And I was like, hell yeah, like this is so cool. So I always loved the hype for the Rumble too. And yeah, as you said, the excitement over who was going to be in the Rumble match. And for me, it was always like, I'd love to see somebody out of nowhere win. That was always my big thing, was like, let me get Savio Vega to win the Royal Rumble. My thing was always like, he could win. And my family would look at me and be like, come on, you know he's got no shot. But I always thought the Royal Rumble was so much fun. Have you ever been to a Royal Rumble?
Oh, that's my bucket list. It's got to be number one on my pro wrestling bucket list is a Royal Rumble. I have been very lucky, very blessed to mark off just about every other, major pay-per-view, every other match type. I've seen Hell in a Cell, Elimination Chamber, whatever you can think of, I've seen. Royal Rumble is got to be number one. Honestly, probably the last thing on my wrestling bucket list to go to. It came to Atlanta. I'm originally from Augusta, Georgia, which is about 2 hours outside of Atlanta. Came to Atlanta in 2002, and I was just a little bit too young. I was 15 at the time, and it was like my parents would take me to a house show in Augusta, but they didn't like wrestling. They were not about to drive me up 2 hours. I wasn't too young to drive myself to go. So I remember just, cursing not being able to go to that Royal Rumble. And I still want to find a way to make it to one day. What about you?
I've been to 5 Royal Rumble pay-per-views. There are times I forget how many times I've been to shows, and then sometimes I'll say it and I'll be like, I've been to a lot of shows. But yeah, I've been to the Royal. So my first ever Royal Rumble was actually at a house show. It was
the MSG one,
right? A random MSG house show won by Hart, who I loved at the time. I liked him like on the low, because I think at the time he was already a heel. He was like 94, so I think he's already a heel or close to it. And I was so excited when he won, and I was so excited there was a Rumble on the house show, and it was right at the clock. So you just would get out would come somebody, the next guy. But it was so cool to see that. And then from there, I've been to the Royal Rumble 2008 at Madison Square Garden, which is one of my favorite events. I know the event is not something that, if you look back at it, it's not the greatest show. But going into it, you had I think it was Ric Flair retirement match against Jeff Hardy going against Randy Orton for the title. Edge against Rey Mysterio, and I think it was JBL against Chris Jericho. And it was Jericho's first pay-per-view match back, I want to say. So that was a really, really fun show. And then from there, I went to the Royal Rumble 2010 in Atlanta, Georgia. My friend and I decided very last minute. We were on the phone talking about what were our plans for the Rumble, and I threw out we should go. And then he's like, let's do it. And so we went 2 or 3 days beforehand, planned this whole thing. Did the whole call out of sick from work, and away we went to the Royal Rumble, and it was wild. I'd never seen so many people so excited to welcome people into an airport like I did in Atlanta, and it's from that Rumble that when we were in the cab going home from that Rumble, they announced, because they used to announce if you were at a Royal Rumble, they used to announce the next year's WrestleMania was going to be at that show at that same city. So they announced WrestleMania 27 was going to be there. And so we were like, we've got to go back. And we did that basically because we heard it on the radio there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. And then from there,
I didn't go to that Royal Rumble that year. Now that you say that, I remember we went to Raw the next night, which was in Nashville, which was where Travis was living at the time. So, so ended up, that's why I didn't go. Me and a couple other buddies, we watched the Royal Rumble together that night. And then we got in the car and drove to Nashville to go see Raw that week. So that's why I missed that Royal Rumble. And now I'm upset.
No, that's such a great story though. That's a lot of fun. You're watching, you're like, hey, we're all going to go to Raw the next night. Do you remember anything that happened on that Raw?
That was the night that William Shatner was the guest host of Monday Night.
Yes, and Bret Hart had returned. I think
Bret Hart was there that night.
And then it'd come back. That's very cool.
It was fun. Yeah.
And then they started becoming we got to go every year because it was the most now. So we went the next year again in 2011 to Boston, Massachusetts. Then we went 2018, took 2 years off, went 2018 to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And then I have this kind of deal where I only go on one wrestling trip per year that's out of the state. So in 2019 with WrestleMania here, we made the Rumble our destination wrestling trip. And so we did Rumble 19 in Phoenix, Arizona. So
Nice.
Interesting that the only Rumble I've been to that, at least the pay-per-view wise, was the one right here in New York. I've only been to one of them in New York.
Yeah.
Probably the one I missed out on the most. As I have my 3 trips I missed out on the most were three wrestling shows were SummerSlam 98, Royal Rumble 2000, and then WrestleMania 20. Were my three shows that were tough.
Yeah, but you've been to a lot of other ones that make up for that. So, but there are always the ones that got away. I get it.
Yeah. So and those were also way before I started going. So I didn't start going to shows till I was older. Because like my parents, same thing as you, would take me to house shows, maybe the one-off Raws. But like I didn't even realize you can go to pay-per-views probably till I was like because they were so expensive, and it wasn't like hop on eBay and get them. So in looking at and getting ready for our top 10 list here, is there any Royal Rumble that pops into your mind that you knew immediately wouldn't even come close? So maybe the worst Rumble you ever thought of, or one that sticks out as like they just completely missed the mark?
Ooh, so this is interesting. We'll see, because there are 2 that I knew for sure, and it will be interesting to see if they, for some reason, may have made your list. I
have a feeling we're going to be very different in our 2 lists.
Okay. Well, the number one that comes to mind, I think, is the worst Royal Rumble is 1995. I hate that Royal Rumble. It is the first one they ever did where they changed the intervals from 2 minutes to 60 seconds, which was like just not enough time to breathe. I know they play fast and loose with the times. They say 2 minutes, but sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But 60 seconds was just too much. There is just no star power in that Royal Rumble outside of Shawn Michaels. And I mean, even the Bulldog is, you knew British Bulldog wasn't about to win the Royal Rumble, even though he goes, coast to coast with Shawn Michaels in it. There's just nobody else in that Rumble. And it does have an amazing finish. Shawn Michaels, one foot hitting the floor. That's probably top 3 all-time Rumble finishes right there. It's so creative and cool. That's literally the only thing that saves that Rumble, in my opinion.
That's a really rough one. I do love the idea because I remember when he's doing the whole dangling thing and he's got 1 foot and Vince McMahon's going 1 foot, 1 foot. They play Bulldog's music.
Yes.
And so I remember sitting on the couch like, oh my gosh, like Bulldog's always just kind of been a mid-card guy. Are they really running with the British Bulldog against Diesel? And then Shawn comes in and throws it on. It's like, okay.
Yep.
That was a pretty cool finish.
Played his music, but didn't ring the bell. That was the key point right there.
Yeah.
And then I would say the other one I knew for sure wasn't making my list was 2015, where Roman Reigns wins. But this is obviously way before the crowd is really behind Roman Reigns. Everybody wants Daniel Bryan to win that night. The crowd is just booing everything. And then you got it ends with Big Show and Kane in there just heaving out everybody's fans' favorites, and it's just killing the crowd. I remember being miserable driving home. We watched that with a group of friends and just thinking, that sucked. I don't even want to watch Raw the next night. Like, that was awful.
Yeah, it was. I think that one definitely was a really rough one, and it was one of these deals where I remember the next night they were supposed to be in Hartford, Connecticut for a show, and we were all going to go because we were so angry at the Rumble. We were going to show them by paying and going to Raw.
That's right.
And all night I remember canceled WWE Network was trending on Twitter.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate troll move, WWE said, thank you for 1 million subscribers, because they just hit 1 million subscribers. And Raw that night got snowed out.
Snowed out. That's right. I remember that.
We couldn't go. And I really wonder, like, the next night, the crowd was not as, like, I feel like if that night you got Roman out there, celebrating, instead of, like, sitting down and doing those really good sit-down interviews with whoever they had go in there, I think would have been really interesting to see. But yeah, that one was they had a 2-year stretch there. I think 2014 also wasn't any good.
Yeah, I agree.
2015 definitely was one that, at least for 2014, it's so funny because 2014 people really liked Roman. If they decided to throw a curveball in there they could have actually had Roman win, gone with the new guy going into WrestleMania 30, and never had to go with Daniel Bryan if they really didn't want to.
Exactly. Yep. He was still really hot in the Shield, and people were ready to see him break out. But yeah, that had been squandered in the next year, of course. So,
Yeah.
What about you? Did you have any that for sure were not making yours?
So I remember last year's 2022, the men's Royal Rumble being one that I think that was a tough one, because that going into that show, I was so amped. I was like, this show is going to be great. They had a can't miss St. Louis stadium show, Randy Orton's hometown. It felt like everything going into this was just so exciting. And I remember someone on Twitter, I had put up some, like, I didn't know who was going to win the Rumble. And he wrote back, oh, well, it's on the betting sites that Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar are returning and winning. And it just absolutely, I was like, are you kidding me? And it killed the whole show for me. And even being a huge Shane McMahon fan, I am as huge as they come. I love Shane O'Mac. He's my guy. I don't know if and my wife's favorite performer of all time is Bad Bunny. So for the two of us, we were pretty happy with the surprise entrance. But
yeah.
Getting to them was just like the biggest. It felt like you had 100 guys who had no chance. And I remember as they got down to number 30, just like, please don't beat Brock Lesnar. Like anyone else but Brock, because that guy ruined it for me on Twitter. It was Brock, of course. And Brock comes in and wins. And it was just really a disappointing Royal Rumble match. And so that one was one that popped out, along with definitely 2015. Those were the two for me that were two of the worst ones.
I actually just watched both of the 22 Royal Rumbles this past week, getting ready for this, because I had missed Rumble last year and I had just never gone back and watched it. But, I wanted to be sure. I wanted to make sure I'd seen every single Rumble before I watched this, or before we recorded, just to make sure those didn't crack my list. And, spoiler alert, neither of those did.
No, but I will say the women's one, at least you had like Melina return. That was fun. And you also had Mickie James show up with the TNA title.
That was cool.
That was very cool. But like, if those are your only two things that you're stretching for, it's not a good Rumble.
Yeah. And my problem with the women's Rumble, and honestly, I don't love any of the women's Rumbles so far. But my problem with last year's was there was a stretch in the middle. I think it was 6 out of 7 or 7 out of 8 people in a row were non-main roster people that came into the Rumble. It's like, I'm all for the surprise. I'm all for the comebacks in the Rumble. But I think a lot of the women's Rumbles, there just have been way too many surprises and comebacks. Like, they're not spaced out enough. It kind of takes away from the people on the main roster. Kelly is not winning the Royal Rumble. Like, and it's fine to have a couple of those, but when you have like 7 or 8 in a row of people, no main roster people coming in for that long of a stretch, it's like, what are we doing here, folks?
Yeah, and it also is like it dilutes the surprise. Like,
it does.
I was watching that and going, oh, you know who that is? I think she just debuted in NXT a couple weeks ago. That's not really, like, it doesn't do much to build up anything, as opposed to like just finding someone else to do it, who's on the main roster. And so I completely, that's a great point. I do think that's one of the things with the Rumbles, especially recently, is it's become a little too much, I feel, of who are the surprise entrants.
Yep.
If there's 2 or 3 great surprise entrants and they're spaced out well, it's wonderful. But if it's like you need, like 2012 is one that pops to mind, where they had every announcer make an appearance. Karma ran in with an appearance. You had all these, like, Mick Foley came in and then Santino came in and they did the thing with the Sacco and the thing. Too many of the surprise entrants to where it's like, also, if these people are returning every single year, I think Kelly did several Royal Rumbles at this point.
Yes.
Like, how many times do we need to see her?
Exactly. Nope. I second all of those opinions for sure.
Yeah. So, but I'm glad you got to at least go back and watch the Rumble matches and go through there. Now, so when you were looking at what makes a great Rumble for you and making this list, what were some of the things that came? How did you determine your top 10?
I think the things I was looking for were, and kind of goes back to what you were saying a little bit earlier, the build up to the Rumble match itself. I want a Rumble that has a great storyline that kind of goes through the Rumble itself, or has something there. That's a big part to me. Just moments that you remember. If there are like 3, 4, 5 like classic moments in the Rumble that you remember, that bumps it up to me, in my opinion. A great finish. That's one of the things I looked for. I think that's the biggest thing to me, is the way that it ends, and unpredictability. Like the best Rumbles to me are ones where you don't know who's going to win it 3 weeks out. You go into it and there's at least two guys, hopefully 3 or 4 guys where you think, maybe that person could win it. I think those make for the best Rumbles.
I love what you said. I completely agree. For me, first thing I was looking at was I got rid of the extra stuff, the extra Rumble, so to speak. So I didn't include things like the 2004 SmackDown Rumble, even though it was great.
It was great.
That was cool. The Corporate DX Royal Rumble, another great kind of B level type of Royal Rumble, where Vince McMahon won, but then China came in, threw him out, really won. Awesome.
Great moment.
Yeah, very, very cool moment. I think was that going into
99.
99, yes, because they were trying to figure out who was going to be number 30, and he tried to get that number. That was cool. And then greatest Royal Rumble from Saudi Arabia, I did not include the 50 man with I think Braun Strowman, I want to say, won that one. So I didn't include that. But then, for me, I mean, of course, it was personal preference. I did try to eliminate the live event bias from being there live. Sometimes you get, I'll throw in like I'll talk about them during my honorable mentions before I get to my number one.
Okay.
But yeah, just in case they're on your list, I feel bad burying the Rumble, and then there it is, number 1 on your list. But yeah, try to eliminate the live event bias. But for me, it's also the ones I enjoyed the most. I think are kind of what are in my top 10. But I did try to quell it a little bit and kind of go from there. So would you like to get us started here with your number 10?
I'll do it. Absolutely.
All right.
So for me, my number 10, I ended up going with 1997 was my number 10 Royal Rumble, won by Stone Cold Steve Austin. And for me, the things that stuck out to me on this one is, it's the dawning of Stone Cold Steve Austin. It's his first real major push. This is 7 or 8 months after the Austin 316 speech. It's a couple months after he faced Bret Hart at Survivor Series, and he comes in early to this Royal Rumble. He's dominant through the first stretch of it, and then you have that great moment where he's alone in the ring and Bret Hart's music hits, and get that shocked face from Austin. He's got to face his rival there. And, an incredible finish, again, where Austin gets eliminated, but the refs are distracted. I believe it's Terry Funk and Mankind out there fighting. And so Austin sneaks back in. He dumps out Taker and Vader and Bret Hart, and he cheats to win the Royal Rumble there. Of course, he doesn't go to WrestleMania. You joined us. We did the Final Four match on Talking Taker. We did a watch along for that last year. But man, I love all those aspects of it, and I think it's a fun one to go back and watch. There's some interesting entrants in that one as well. But that's why I put that one at number 10 for me.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, that one. And you want to talk about an unexpected winner? I think Austin that year is pretty unexpected.
Agreed. Yeah.
Comes out, and I think the story there is. On Livewire or something, they asked Vince Russo who he thought was going to win the Rumble, and he said it's pretty obvious Bret Hart's going to win the Royal Rumble. And Vince McMahon called him up, going crazy, yeah, he is going to win, but why would you tell everyone that? Made the change, and I think it's really for the better. I think that's that's probably the number one thing that makes that Royal Rumble so memorable.
Yeah, you didn't see it coming. It was very, very spontaneous and came out of nowhere.
Yeah, for sure. Number 10 for me, we had talked about how sometimes the greatest Royal Rumble winners are the most unpredictable. This one on my list, the Royal Rumble winner was probably the most predictable, but I think it worked. I went with 2002 as my 10 entry. It was very close for me. That's a wonderful Royal Rumble for me. Number one, the thing that jumps out at me is just it's split up so well. You have the Hardys kind of go at it, and then the Undertaker comes in. Undertaker has his little deal where he dominates for a while, and it looks like he's big evil Undertaker here. It looks like he's going to go on a long run. And then who should come out but Tough Enough Maven? And I remember he came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, please, Maven. This would be incredible. Eliminate. I love Tough Enough. Tough Enough was my show. I was like, this would be amazing. Can't believe he's even in the Rumble. And he comes in there, and he actually eliminates Taker. And I just lost my mind. And you talk about, and I don't need to tell you this, what an unselfish guy the Undertaker is to allow that to happen. And yeah, he obliterates Maven with the chair after that and then destroys him. But for a while after that period of time, you had your big six in WWE. You had like the NWO, and you had Rock, Angle, Triple H, Austin, the main eventers. But I feel like right below them, Maven was like a featured part of the show.
He was
forward for a while. And I think it all stems from Undertaker allowing him to come in there and eliminate him. Just an incredible moment. You also had 4 big surprises that year. They did announce them ahead of time, which was a little strange because I don't think they fully understood the concept of the surprise entrant yet.
No, they're booking it more like comebacks. But yeah, they really didn't do the surprises. But I thought it was cool. It was a unique way to do it because you got little vignettes for all of them leading up to it.
Yeah, and it made it seem like each one was really important. You have this great moment where Triple H and Austin face off. They're in the ring facing off, and then who interrupts them but the Hurricane, who tries to double choke slam both guys. You need those kind of soft comedy spots in between. And then I think the best part of it was, A, that Mr. Perfect comes back, but then B, that he makes it to the final 3 and looks incredible. Like,
oh, yeah.
He was so great to see him back. Triple H does get the win there, but I was also at his return to Raw a couple weeks before this. So he was like, that 2002 return Triple H, I just thought was such an incredible babyface. And I thought that kind of capped off his return. I thought it was great.
I agree, man. My only disappointment with that was I really thought Mr. Perfect was going to get this nice little run after that Royal Rumble because he had such a great performance. And sadly, he really didn't really amount to much of anything much more after that. It was really his last great moment because, unfortunately, if you go back and watch those Raws and he does have some singles matches, you can tell, he doesn't have much gas left in the tank. But for that one night in that Royal Rumble, he got to have that moment of glory, which was pretty special.
Oh, yeah. After that Rumble ends, I for sure thought they're going to go with Stone Cold against Mr. Perfect. 100% where I was going to go with. That's where I thought they were going. But instead, I think he's like on a heat match and isn't even like on the main card. So, so that's where I went with number 10.
I do love it. I love it. I think Maven, Undertaker, I think that is the greatest. It's either number 1 or number 2 greatest moment in Royal Rumble history. Maven eliminated the Undertaker because it sums up everything you were talking about. There's a chance. There's a chance that this undercard guy, this nobody, could win. He's in the match. He's got a puncher's chance, and oh my God, he actually eliminated the Undertaker. It's everything the Rumble should be. So excellent pick there for number 10.
Thank you.
Number 9. I'm guessing this is. I don't know if it's controversial, but it's definitely a sentimental pick for me, but I'm going to try to make a case for it here. I don't think it's in a lot of people's top 10, but I'm going to put 1994 for my number 9 Royal Rumble. And I'll tell you why. It is one that I watched many, many times as a kid. It's one of the few VHS tapes that I had as a kid because, the tapes were expensive back in the day. But this one I copied illegally with 2 VCRs, rented it from the store and made a copy of it. I didn't do that all the time. Didn't want the FBI to catch me, but occasionally I would copy them. And so I watched this one a lot, but it does have some very important moments in it. And the first one is Diesel coming in. I think he's number 5 or 6 maybe, but he is the first guy really to get what's known as the Diesel push in the Royal Rumble, where he comes in, he clears the ring, and then for 3 or 4 guys in a row, he chucks them out before even the next 2 minutes comes in. And this is the moment where Kevin Nash became a star, is in this Royal Rumble. He went from being Shawn's bodyguard to being a guy who's going to be world champion later that year. And that was huge from this Royal Rumble. And the finish is one of the most creative finishes. It's one that they've done to death, honestly, since then. But you've got Bret Hart and Lex Luger and you really didn't know who was going to win. Either one of those guys could have main evented WrestleMania that year. It's rumored that they did this finish to sort of gauge the crowd reaction to see who they should go with at WrestleMania that year, where they eliminate each other at the same time, and both feet hit the floor at the same time. I remember rewinding that tape over and over again to see if I could catch, where they land first. I do think Luger's feet hit a millisecond before Bret Hart's, but honestly, they did it pretty darn good for what they did there. And so I just thought that was so creative and so unique to come up with that Rumble finish. And honestly, if you go back and watch it, the pop that Bret Hart gets when he enters the Rumble, because he's supposed to be injured from earlier in the night, where Owen Hart kicks his leg out of his leg after their tag team match. So they actually have a spot in the Rumble where nobody comes out, and so commentary's saying, "Oh, that must be Bret Hart. His leg is too hurt to compete." But then, like 2 spots later, he limps out of there, selling his leg. The crowd goes nuts, and man, it's a sentimental pick, but I do think there's some very, very fun stuff, and I think it's worthy to be in the top 10.
Yeah, no, that is a great shout, and I will say, that one for me, I always remember Royal Rumble 1984. It's probably the reason it doesn't cross my mind right away is because growing up, I was so afraid of the Undertaker segment. So it was one that was like labeled "Do Not Watch" because of the Undertaker, the ascending to the heavens. I thought he had passed away. I was miserable, and it took a while to recover for that Royal Rumble match. But I think you made some really great points there. The Diesel thing is cool because you almost feel his confidence building with each one of those eliminations.
Yes.
Like he starts going, like in the beginning, he's a little kind of whatever, but then towards the end, he's getting the glove going and he's getting all into this. And it's like, wow, this guy is legit. And the ending there, you're right. I think the best part of that ending is when they finally do announce both men have won and they hit the classic WrestleMania.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, here we go. You don't even know where they're going.
What's going to happen? How are they going to have both guys?
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. That's a great shout. I do think, some of my list, I feel like I have a little bit of a recency bias because some of those older ones, though, that's a lot of fun. And it's a great shout by you. And I remember feeling like, for sure, the story here is Lex Luger's going to win. He can't get another title at SummerSlam. He's definitely going to get this. And then when he and Brett tie, it's like, oh, man, they're still going with Brett. Like, all right, they're going back to Brett. Like, that was really cool. So very, very cool.
Okay.
Moving along here on my list here, talk about Worlds. I don't think are probably on your list, but for me, a little sentimental. I tried to avoid the live event bias. Maybe I do have a live event bias for this one. It is the women's 2018 Royal Rumble match. Tons of, as you said earlier, tons of surprise entrants in this one. Almost too many, especially because they just did Raw 25 where they brought about half these people in. Right. You had all of them brought back again. But I will say that for this one, I give them a little bit of a pass because it was sort of the culmination of the women's division coming up. You start with Sasha Banks and Becky. They both last about 30 minutes or more. Sasha goes 54 minutes in this one. So it's kind of like they're like, all right, these are 2 of our killers in the women's division. We're serious about the 2 of them. You had 2 women who were in NXT at the time, Kairi Sane and Ember Moon, who just had a great match the night before. So that crowd was really amped to see her. And even though a lot of people don't like the Bellas, I'll never forget this moment where, being there live, Nikki Bella comes out and everyone just boos her. And then I let out a big Brie mode, kind of the Brie mode, the Brie mode. And then the next entrant is Brie Bella. The music hits and my section just pops and we start high-fiving each other. And it was even though the Bellas were certainly hated, at least the right person won in Asuka, gets the big win. And even though it wasn't a part of the Royal Rumble match, and if we're not allowed to include anything that took place outside of the Rumble, this probably falls out of my top 10. But the ending is incredible here because you had they were so smart in the way they did this because if Ronda came in as an entrant in the Rumble, she had to win.
Right.
You couldn't have Asuka lose, though, because you're building to Asuka being undefeated going into WrestleMania. So they were able to protect Asuka, still got a big pop at number 30 with Trish Stratus, and then you have this moment at the end where you bring up both champions. You got Alexa Bliss and Charlotte there. Asuka standing in between the 2 of them. Stephanie McMahon is like looking at the 3 women, the WrestleMania science position, and then boom, Ronda's music hits. And they waited so long. There were many people who left And then Ronda's music hit, and you just heard like all these people, including my wife, running back in, and just so happy to see her. And I know that a lot of people dog on Ronda now. Don't think her run's very good. It's not great, but I think that when she first came there, that was like, not only had the women's division arrived, but you could really have bought that it was going to be a major deal. And then that led to obviously the Evolution pay-per-view, and within the next year, they're main eventing WrestleMania. So I think it's a historic match, and that's why I put it on my list.
I honestly, I have it written as my honorable mention is the 2018 Women's Royal Rumble. I don't have any of the Women's Rumble matches on my list, for some of the reasons that I talked about earlier. But I do think that is my favorite of the ones that they have done so far. And I'm a fan. I love that they do a Women's Royal Rumble now. I do kind of wish they would do it. Make the Royal Rumble 2 nights. Like, I think that's my only complaint is like 2 Royal Rumbles on the same night is a little bit too much in my opinion. Or do the Women's Royal Rumble for the main event at SummerSlam. Do it in July or something like that. Space them out through the year. Do something else with it. But that's not a here nor there. It is still a good one for all the reasons you mentioned. It's my favorite of the Women's Rumbles, and it's right outside my list. Just couldn't quite squeeze it in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hey, this is tough. I mean, to get 10 Rumbles is hard. There's a lot of really good ones.
It's tough, man. It's tough. My number 8, I do have some recent ones in here, some from the past few years, and this is one for me. Number 8. Again, I don't know if this would be on everybody's list, but I really liked the unique concept of it, and that's the 2016 Royal Rumble, which was the Roman Reigns 1 versus all Royal Rumble, where he's the champ going into it. He's facing off with the Authority, and they decide, all right, we're going to get the title off of you somehow, because you're going into the Royal Rumble number 1. You're going to defend the world title, and if you can survive the Royal Rumble against 29 other guys as champion, so be it. But we're going to do everything we can to get it off of you. And I thought that was so smart because, like we mentioned earlier, 2015, Romans hate it. They cannot. They want to make this guy the guy, but the crowd is just not feeling it. And I thought this was a really good way to win the crowd over, to get some sympathy for him. Of course, you've got maybe the best surprise debut in Rumble history with AJ Styles coming in. What a great moment, great reaction, and he has lived up to the hype from that moment. I mean, he's went on to have a great WWE career since then. And I liked the finish of it. I know some people probably didn't like it, but I liked Triple H coming in and winning. You didn't necessarily see it coming, but it made a lot of sense for him to come in there at number 30. Like, all right, nobody else can get the job done. The game's going to come in here and get the job done. And I thought it was even creative that they didn't have it end with Triple H and Roman, but actually Roman got eliminated a couple spots earlier. So you got Triple H and Dean Ambrose. So that was kind of cool to have that moment in there. It's not perfect. There's a big chunk where Roman's on the outside and, not in the Rumble. He probably was out of the ring a little bit too long for that moment. But again, I just think the concept of it was really cool and really unique. I like when they do something a little bit different with the Rumble and have a storyline that's going all the way through it. So that's why I put it at number 8 for me.
Yeah, that's a good shout too. And I one of the things I love about that Rumble as well, I think it's that Rumble, is Sami Zayn returns at that Rumble and he goes after Kevin Owens, and there's a ton of heat when he does. Like,
yes,
crazy for him. But they were so smart with the debut of AJ there, doing it in Orlando, where TNA recorded all their shows right at Universal Studios. So the place was so erupts for the guy. And I feel like ever since he's debuted, it's led to every year around this time, people going, oh, Kenny. For years it was this Kenny Omega coming in. Kenny Omega's going to be in the Rumble. And Rollins even one year was like, who would you love to see in the Rumble? And he would drop Kenny Omega's name to add to it. Then it was, it's going to be Kazuchika Okada. And so you had Tanahashi or all these guys who, like, every year, this year is probably Jay White, and they look for the guy because of AJ. But when AJ came in, that really was like, especially because I think he came in like number 3.
Number 3.
Yeah, and so Roman's in there alone, I think, and Roman like almost has the look on his face like, who is this guy,
Yeah.
That was very, very cool. And I like the ending was great, I thought. I was like, Triple H came out, I was like, all right, Roman might not actually keep the belt, because you thought going through the whole thing, Roman's walking away as the champ. But yeah, very cool. Number 8 for me, this one did require a rewatch. Okay. And when I rewatched this one for a long period of time, was, I think, my number one favorite Rumble of all
Ooh.
time. But unfortunately, with everything that went down, and it is the Rumble 2004,
Yeah.
With Chris Benoit and everything, I don't think I watched it very much after he passed away, just because it became a little tough for me to watch Benoit stuff for a long period of time. It just became like weird almost, like you're looking at this guy who you loved rooting for. But even if you take the Benoit stuff out of it, I think the story of Benoit is great, because I think going into that Rumble, they had never done a number 30 entrant winning at the time. So they announced Goldberg was going to be number 30 and Lesnar was champion. So this made a lot of sense that Goldberg would win the match and then go on to face Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 20. So I thought for sure that's where they were going to go. Instead, they go with Benoit, who like out of nowhere they had the storyline, a really good story going in, that he was always kind of the B+ player on the rise and always fell a little bit short. But at the same time, he finally does overcome the big monster, Big Show. And Big Show has his best showing ever in a Rumble. They can't get him out. There are 12 guys who keep trying their best to eliminate Big Show. And at one point, you've got like every great technical wrestler in there and fun character. You've got like Kurt Angle, RVD, Jericho, Christian, John Cena, and all of them are just trying to get rid of Big Show, and they can't. And when they don't, you're like, wow, are they really going to go with Big Show here? Because I don't know how they'll get rid of him. And they eventually do a really cool spot where Benoit kind of pulls him down and ends up pulling him out and over.
I love that.
That way, going the distance. So that was great. Two other things on there. You had the tease between Jericho eliminating Christian. So I love that they set up a lot of WrestleMania 20 type stuff from that. You also had the tease. Kane comes in, eliminates everyone. The next entrant, you got the lights go out, the dong hits, and it's like, oh my gosh, Dead Man Taker's coming. And then lastly, Mick Foley also comes to eliminate Randy Orton. When Orton started number 2, it looked like he might go all the way with Benoit. And instead, Foley does show up to prove he isn't a coward and kind of get that ball rolling. So much coming out of that Royal Rumble. I understand if people don't love it now because of everything that's occurred. But I think it's one of the better ones and made my list at number 8.
You're absolutely right, man. It was hard to not put that one in my list for the reasons you mentioned. You know, I just can't, you know, I don't have the same sentimentality for it as I did back in the day, but that used to be probably in my top 3 Rumbles. I think Benoit's performance is epic. A lot of great moments in there that you mentioned. I'd honestly forgotten about a couple of them right there, but it's a very well told story in there. And the fact that they actually made Big Show a legitimate threat in there where you're actually like believing, yeah, maybe Big Show's going to main event WrestleMania until that awesome finish. Benoit, you know, just muscling him out of the ring. He's just got all the adrenaline, all the momentum from the fans behind him, and he does the impossible and gets him out of there. It's a great story. So I have no problem with that being in the top 10. That's a great pick. Yeah. Number 7 for me. So kind of 8, 7, and 6. This was like the toughest range for me. I flip-flopped these choices a lot. They're all kind of, I could put them all kind of in one of those numbers, but I went with 2010. Okay. I thought 2010, which you were at, as you mentioned, was a very, very fun Royal Rumble from top to bottom. Starting out with CM Punk in there, and he's peak straight edge society, and he's kind of doing the Diesel push. He's getting everybody out one by one, and he's getting the mic and getting to do his straight edge sermons after he eliminates everybody out of the ring. Great heel heat there. You've got, I believe this is when Beth Phoenix and Great Khali have their, she eliminates Khali with the kiss. Yeah. Great all-time Rumble comedy spot in there. And then you've got this story with Shawn Michaels where he is desperately trying to face The Undertaker, get his rematch at WrestleMania 26. Undertaker keeps refusing. Undertaker's the world champ at the time, so Shawn says, all right, I'm going to go win the Royal Rumble. I'm going to pick you to face. You can't refuse me anymore. So you just, oh, man, you feel like it's got to happen this way. This is for sure. Shawn Michaels a lock to win the Royal Rumble. He's the sentimental pick. He's tossing people out. And there's this just heartbreaking moment where he is just hanging on by a thread, hanging on by one hand, and finally releases and lets go, just in a way that only Shawn Michaels can. And it's just devastating. It's like, yeah, his dreams are over. His dreams are crushed. How is he going to survive? And then You got the surprise of Edge coming in at number 30. Nobody saw it coming. He comes in and wins the Royal Rumble. Flips the main event scene up on its ear for what's going into WrestleMania. You just didn't expect him to be back then. So just great top to bottom show, in my opinion.
Yeah, lots of fun being there for that one. I'll never forget the after the show. I remember pleading with my friend James, and I had said, "Can we please go to the to this diner that was on the way back?" I was hungry. He's like, "Let's just get room service. I'm exhausted." So we got room service. Didn't go to the diner. And when I got back to the hotel, a gentleman shows up with his son. They're all in Cena gear, and I was like, "Oh, do you guys go to the show?" They're like, "Yeah." I always do that, even though it's like, no, we didn't go to the show. We're just randomly all here at the Atlanta hotel up the street. But when I had asked them, they said, yeah, we actually went to the diner right up the road, and look who we met. And they had pictures with Dolph Ziggler and Edge.
Oh, no way.
So had we gone, we would have met Dolph Ziggler and Edge. But at the same time, it was really cool, especially because Edge was kind of like, he returned it. It was like he was not supposed to return. So it was very cool. They didn't bring him out at 30 because I think they were like, people would expect a surprise at 30th entrant. So they brought him out at 29. So I like that.
You're right. Yeah. I think I said 30, but you're right. Yep.
Oh, it was 30? Yeah. Maybe it was 30.
No, I think I said 30, but yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. That was that very good, very, very good Royal Rumble. Number 7 on my list is actually one you've said earlier. It is the 1997 Royal Rumble. Love this Royal Rumble. It is probably it's so high on my list because of the fact that you had seen the Diesel push in 1994, and you figured, all right, that's where they're going with Stone Cold here. So you figure Austin's going to come in. He's going to have his interactions with a bunch of people, and he does. He has his interaction with Tom Brady, throws him out like a sack of potatoes. He's going through everyone. He's checking his watch, and he's just like, this guy's incredible. But at some point, the music's going to hit. It's going to be Bret Hart, and he's out of here. There's no way Austin's winning. But then he does. And so I think it was by far at the time, Royal Rumble was every big name won the Royal Rumble. You didn't really have, aside from the first two, you didn't really have anyone other than your top guy winning. And Austin at the time, he won King of the Ring, but then he lost at Survivor Series 96. And it felt like he had kind of gone back down the pecking order of it. So now to have him actually win was like, I remember being like, this is amazing. Like, this is incredible. Like, are they really going to go with Austin? And little did we know he'd go on to be one of the biggest stars in the company. Probably higher on my list, honestly, if they didn't have so many random AAA guys there that I just didn't know it.
It's very weird looking back on it. Yeah, Mil Mascaras in there, and then Terry Funk, which was cool, but also like random. That's a weird part of it for sure. Number 6 for me is one you've mentioned. This one right here, Royal Rumble 2002. That's why I put it number 6. Again, like I said, I think Taker and Maven is probably the greatest moment in Royal Rumble history, so I gotta bump it up for that. All the surprise entrants or comeback entrants that you mentioned, and the finish is just really well done. It reminds me a lot of what they're doing with Cody Rhodes this year, and that could they have had Triple H come back as a surprise in 2002? Sure, they could have had him come back as a surprise from his injury, but it was such a huge moment that he was coming back because they built it up for weeks. They gave him all these video packages and training packages. They made him this tremendous baby face going into it. And I saw a lot of people complaining online this week about Cody Rhodes coming back and them announcing it. Like, oh, why don't they make it a surprise? It'd be so much better if Cody Rhodes was a surprise. What happened to surprises? It's like, guys, they're going to have surprises at the Royal Rumble. There's still going to be other surprises. We all knew Cody was coming back at the Rumble, even if he was a surprise. We all figured he was coming back. Why not get some more mileage out of it and make him into an even bigger baby face by showing him training, showing him coming back, reminding us why we love Cody Rhodes. And I think we're going to see a very similar story play out in this year's Royal Rumble. And I thought what they did with Triple H was excellent for this one.
Yeah. It's definitely a great show, and I'm glad to see it was on your list too. I think it made mine. I knew it had to be there. I just didn't know where it was going to fall.
Yeah.
And very similarly to in a similar vein, the next one on my list is the 2010 Royal Rumble. Like you said, the CM Punk stuff in the beginning is awesome. It's also feels like such a changing of the guard. You do still have your guys like Kane and Shawn Michaels, Triple H, those guys, but you have so many guys who are on the rise. Right from the start, it's Dolph Ziggler and Evan Bourne, who felt like guys in the future. Then you have Punk kind of taking over things, and he's cutting a sermon throughout his entire run in the Rumble, and he even hits him with, "Give me a second, it's clobbering time," and then goes and does his thing. And that was his big thing for a long time there. And then eventually, obviously, Triple H comes in and gets rid of him. One of the other things I wanted to mention about this particular match that I love is, like you had said about the Beth Phoenix thing. Beth Phoenix comes in and eliminates Great Khali. What's interesting there is in real life at the time, her and CM Punk were in a relationship. So I think he hits her with the go to sleep. But like if you were following that circle of people, which I remember at the time was kind of like CM Punk, Colt Cabana, you had Beth Phoenix, the lead singer of Paramore, and her boyfriend New Found Glory. And they were like your straight edge, cool kids club in the early 2010s. So when Beth Phoenix and CM Punk were in there, I remember being like really amped that they got their moment there together. This one probably goes higher on my list, if not for two things. Number one, by the time Edge comes in there, everybody's gone. There's only literally 3 people left, and it's all your really tippy-top guys. I was thrilled to see Edge because I was like, there's not many guys left here. And at the time, you had really guys who were really hot and on the rise, like R-Truth and Kofi Kingston. So would have liked to see them better. And while 1992 is remembered so fondly for Bobby Heenan's commentary, and I hate to pile on the guy because he's a local guy and a pretty good guy, but 2010 is taken down several notches due to the commentary of one Matt Stryker, who I can't believe they run with for a full year after this, because you could clearly tell he's doing things just to pop random New York indie wrestlers that no one outside of myself would have even gotten the references, I think. And the announcers are annoyed by him. They're just ignoring everything he says. And then eventually, the next year, he's disposed of because he says, I think when Booker T returns, he's like, "I'm marking out, bro. This is incredible." And that was it for him. He was done. But they let him do WrestleMania that year.
Yeah.
Shawn was his final match. So he was not good. But other than that, great Royal Rumble.
You know, I remember liking Matt Stryker on commentary when he first started because he felt very Joey Styles-esque. You know, he was playing to the smart fans. It's like, okay, I appreciate that. You know, as a self-identifying smart Mark fan, it's like, okay, there's some references in there. It's kind of funny. I like that. But it seemed like week after week, he just like became more and more over the top and annoying. And like you said, I mean, I remember going back and watching that era for Talking Taker, and we would rag on Matt Stryker every week. Like, oh, this is the dumbest stuff he would say. And it was so, it literally, it took you out of the show. You're right. It was enough to make you dislike a match a little bit, him being on commentary. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
So top 5, getting into the top 5 here. These kind of stayed my top 5 over the past week or two as we were debating these. I switched around the bottom 5 a bit, but the top 5 kind of stayed pretty solid right here. And number 5 for me was 2001 Royal Rumble. I think all these next few Royal Rumbles are pretty excellent top to bottom. But this is the one where you got Kane setting the elimination record that would go on to be broken in that greatest Royal Rumble. I think Braun Strowman eliminates a lot of people, but does that even count, really?
Yeah.
And maybe, I guess Roman might have broken it in one of his Rumbles.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
But it's still awesome to see and really unexpected. You got Drew Carey coming in as an entrant, which is he's a Hall of Famer, went in the Hall of Fame. And it is funny. It's a great comedy spot. I'm all for a good comedy spot in the Royal Rumble. It's fun to see him there trying to pay off the wrestlers before Kane comes in there and scares them away. You got a great section there in the middle where it's all the hardcore wrestlers come in one after another. And so you got like a mini hardcore Rumble with weapons in there, which had really never been done in a Rumble before. So that was very fun to see. And again, a very, very unpredictable ending there. You had all the top guys in there, so you didn't quite know who was going to win it. But Stone Cold ends up getting his third Royal Rumble win, which was still unmatched, still has the most Royal Rumble wins there. Man, WWE was it's just peaking in there in 2000, 2001. It's just one of the best times to be a wrestling fan ever. Every guy that comes in the ring is over. Even the job guys who don't have a chance, you're still excited to see them come in there. So it's just, and it comes down to Stone Cold and Kane at the end. So it's fun. You knew Kane wasn't going to win, but it was cool to see him after eliminating all those people. Maybe, possibly he's going to be in there. Of course he's not. Stone Cold gets the win. But man, it just, for me, that one just flows from entry number 1 to entry number 30. It's fun. You're never bored in it. I just enjoy that one all the way through.
That is it's a great Royal Rumble. Like you said, I mean, right there, you're also leading into WrestleMania 17, which I think is probably, if not the best WrestleMania, definitely a top 5 WrestleMania of all time. I know that it's really the end. I'd say it's probably the end of the peak of WWE. I think until they start to bring in all the WCW guys, they are just clicking on all cylinders. Just great. Number 5 for me. Maybe this is a little recency bias, but I think it's a fantastic Royal Rumble. 2020, the men's Royal Rumble.
Mm-hmm.
This one is one that I absolutely loved. And I remember going, how are they going to do this? Because Brock Lesnar was the champ, and he came in at number 1. So it was kind of like, all right, this is going to be really interesting to kind of see how they do this whole deal. And what you got was, 30 minutes of Brock Lesnar in there, and, person after person coming in there, each one of the participants, and him being able to interact with so many people that he normally would not interact with because he was such a part-time attraction. Obviously coming in and doing his deal. I remember he had MVP's music came, and Brock was like feeling the music going. Keith Lee comes out from NXT when Keith Lee was like a can't miss prospect. He comes in and Brock is like, whoa, like big boy, this guy's huge. You have him in there with Shelton from back in the day. They were partners. He does eliminate and dispose of John Morrison in seconds, and that's John Morrison's return. So that was a little disappointing. But all the other ones really cool. Kofi Kingston gets a little revenge because he's the first guy to make it to the next entrant.
Yeah.
And then when he gets eliminated by Drew McIntyre, who had felt like they were about to go big places with, and Ricochet. And I always like that they let Ricochet hang in there to eliminate Brock Lesnar. Like, how random is that?
That was cool.
Him in there. Then they got a couple. They had Matt Riddle come in back when he was a guy in NXT, so that got a lot of people excited. And then, of course, probably the greatest return, but one of them, in Edge coming out. And I remember I actually went to a Yep, I Like Wrestling. Shout out to that Facebook group. I went to their viewing party in New York City to watch that happen, and the bar erupted like anything you'd ever see in your clips of the bars in England going nuts. That's how it was when Edge returned, and he returns, and you love it because he returns. He can't even be a badass because he's just crying.
He's emotional,
soaking in the adulation of the crowd. So just really great stuff. And then you get a fun win with Drew McIntyre, eliminates Roman at the end. I do think they should have went all the way with Edge. I think, like, how incredible would that have been if he won, especially because they were going with him the next year. So I felt like that would have really just been incredible. But we also had the pandemic coming months later, so would have, soured it. But yeah, really great Royal Rumble.
Well, my number 4 is the 2020 Men's Royal Rumble. So right there, right after you, I got it one notch higher. But, I mean, for all the reasons you said, it's so unique. It's the most unique Rumble because you got Brock Lesnar coming in at number 1 and just dominating like we'd never seen before in the first half of the Rumble. And that's really hard to do 30 years into the Royal Rumble, is to have it be unique and to set it apart. So I remember I was texting Travis watching it like, this is the best Rumble ever. This is so cool. This is so fun. It's so different. I love it. Brock Lesnar just murdering people. This is so cool. And then when he finally does get eliminated by McIntyre, I mean, that made McIntyre, he goes on and wins, and like it was his moment. It was Drew McIntyre's time. He had the crowd behind him. You knew, all right, it's his time. He's going to win at WrestleMania this year, and he does. and it's such a disappointment that it's the COVID WrestleMania, because it could have been so awesome to have him get that win with a 80,000 fans in an arena screaming in the crowd after this Rumble, because he had that hype and that momentum after him. And Edge's return, yeah, you're right. That's the greatest return in Royal Rumble history, just because of the emotion, just because I know there had been rumors online. I didn't believe him because of his injuries. I was like, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not buying into this. And so like I got chills. I got goosebumps to see him come out there. One of my all-time favorite guys. I think anybody from our generation, nobody dislikes Edge. Nobody's going to have a bad thing to say about him, even if he's not your favorite guy, but he's definitely one of my favorite guys. So to actually see him come back after thinking he'd never be able to do it, and to perform at a high level that he did, so cool, so special. So yeah, 2020, I put that at number 4 for me.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. When Brock's going through everybody, there does come a moment where I was like, wonder if he's going to go the whole way.
Yeah.
Get rid of everyone and reign triumphant over everyone there. But I mean, did the right thing, did the business, and got Drew over like $1 million. So really, really cool. Number 4 for me, and I think this one's probably going to be a little surprising to some people, is going to be 1992. I think probably surprising because I'm sure most people have it 1 or 2, definitely top 3. It falls a little outside of it. I love the 1992 Royal Rumble as an adult. Growing up, I didn't like Ric Flair at all. My family had ordered, there was some show, I want to say some WCW show in 1990 that had the Road Warriors, so we bought the show. And my family couldn't stand it. And from that moment on, we were like, we're never getting another WCW show. We did not like WCW at all. And we equated WCW with Ric Flair. So when he came in, it was like, oh, no, not Ric Flair. Like, there's no way. And then he comes in and he wins. And I remember just us being so deflated. But as an adult, once I got the Ric Flair anthology, the DVD set that when he like came back and won, I think I really grew a real appreciation for this match. You've got so many people in it, so many Hall of Famers. Anyone from Hulk Hogan to Roddy Piper, who has an incredible entrance where Flair's exhausted, he's down, he's like, who's next? Who's it going to be? And at the time, I think this is the first time they had someone go double duty, where they had a match, and then later on they did a Royal Rumble. Yeah. And Piper comes out, and Flair's like, gosh, anyone but him. And this one, you have Bobby Heenan, the best commentary job of any match.
All time.
Living and dying with everything that Ric Flair does. The whole, it's not fair to Flair. And then at the end, it comes down, it looks like Hogan's going to eliminate him, but Hogan gets dumped before Sid. And then the sore loser he pulls Sid out, and Ric Flair wins. And looking back, it's just an incredible performance. He's in there. He's in and out of the ring. He's doing everything he could to survive. Gorilla Monsoon's great, egging Bobby Heenan on. Like when Flair comes out, he's like, well, one thing's for sure, he won't be there at the end. And then he actually does it. And again, I think one of the things that's great with this is it comes to the backstage vignette afterwards where he does that with a tear in my eye. This is the greatest night of my entire life. And just an incredible promo and an amazing match.
Wow. Hot take, number 4. Ooh.
I know, and I don't know that you'll agree that my top 3 should be ahead of it.
Well, we'll see. That's what it's all about. But I'll talk about it in a second. But number 3 for me, 2008, number 3 for me. It's tough. I mean, the next 3 are all just great. So like it's like real close between my top 3. 2008, you were there, obviously. I'm sure you're going to talk about it. I'd be surprised if you didn't. But the environment in Madison Square Garden is just off the chain, incredible. You've got the perfect what's what I'm looking for? Where they flip it from the final 2 from 2007, yeah. Shawn and Undertaker. You do the inverse. They're the first 2 in 2008. So perfect, so well done. You got Michael Buffer, who does the ring introduction for the 2 of them. So random, but so great. I love the moment in the middle of it where Jimmy Snuka and Roddy Piper come in, and like everybody in the ring just like sits back and watches these two legends in Madison Square Garden, where they've had so many legendary memories and moments, get to have that one last face off, one last moment of glory. So cool. Again, you didn't quite know who was going to win this one. You're thinking probably Triple H, but it could have been a couple of other guys in there as well. And then I won't say too much about it because I think you'll talk about it. But the greatest surprise entrant, John Cena. No one saw it coming. The crowd who, had notoriously hated John Cena, they're so in awe of this moment that they forget to hate him for a few seconds and give him this tremendous pop. He comes in and wins the Rumble. Such a cool moment. All-time great all the way through. Again, just no bad spots, no down spots. It never gets boring. There's always something fun going on in that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's definitely great. I won't talk about it just yet, but it'll be soon to come.
Okay.
Spoiler there. Number 3 for me, you've mentioned it. I went back and rewatched this one. And honestly, if I didn't rewatch this one, I'm not sure it made my top 10. But when rewatching it, I was like, I get why people like this one. It's amazing. That is the Royal Rumble 2001.
Okay.
Probably the Royal Rumble 2001 is probably the best Royal Rumble pay-per-view. You have so much on that show. I think it's like Benoit and Jericho have this ladder match.
Yeah.
It's a really great pay-per-view, and it ends perfectly. That match is honestly, it's a This Is Your Life Kane, because you start with Kane is like your demonic Kane that comes in there, and he scares behooves because Drew Carey, as you said, comes in there, and the Hardys are fighting, and the Hardys eliminate each other. So he's in there, and he's just like soaking in the crowd. He's having a great time. And it was before, like, I feel like Drew Carey comes out now, people boo him out of the building. But back then, they were like, well, this is kind of cool. All right, Drew Carey. Like, he did this whole Cleveland Rock.
I watched Drew Carey show every week back then, man. And Whose Line Is It Anyway? I was a huge Drew Carey fan.
But then you have Kane come in. He's in there, and he goes through, he kind of like reverts back to 1998 Kane, just totally scares Drew Carey. Out goes Drew Carey. Raven saves him. And then, as you mentioned, you get Hardcore Kane. He's in there with all the hardcore guys. He clears house. Now you get a little funny Kane, because here comes the Honky Tonk Man. And out of nowhere, and does his whole performance and starts doing the cool, cocky, and bad. And I'm like, wow, like this is, and it was like before they did really Rumble surprises. So it was really interesting to see the Honky Tonk Man there. Then you get a little deal where it's him and Taker, because Taker comes in, kind of saves Kane a little bit. So they go out there, they had to do their Brothers of Destruction thing for a bit. And then at the end, Austin wins. And I will say this, I think this is my number 1 if Austin doesn't win. I love Stone Cold, but I do think at that stage, he's about 4 years into his run at this point. He's already won it twice. And Kane had this amazing performance where, like, maybe they call an audible and have Kane lose the WrestleMania shot at No Way Out.
Yeah.
And let Austin go. Also, I didn't even mention Haku is a surprise.
Oh, I loved that.
Yeah, and I remember he came out. I was like, "What is going on?"
Because he's the WCW Hardcore Champion at the time. He didn't even. Yeah, he left. He didn't have a contract, but he had a belt, and all of a sudden he's in the Rumble. So random.
Yeah. So random. And again, they make everybody seem so big. Big Show comes in there like a house of fire, destroys everyone. Rock then tosses him, so that sets up their deal. And it does. It feels like the whole way it's going to be Rock and Austin in the end. And then Kane gets rid of the Rock. And there's this moment where Rock and Austin are teetering on the rope, and Kane dumps them. And Austin hangs on. I'm like, the best ending there is Kane just dumps them both. And what a history-making night. But not to be for the Big Red Machine. And instead, though, a great – and I will say, even though I was over Austin at this stage, the crowd erupts. They're not over him at all. They're very happy to see him win.
I think Kane and Kofi Kingston are the two guys where you're just like, God, you just wish they could have gone with them 1 year randomly. I guess there's still hope. Maybe they'll go with Kofi 1 year, with all his, epic elimination saves. It'd be fun to give him a token win one day, and Kane's right up there with him. So you wish it could have happened, but I understand why they didn't. So that's fun. Yeah, it's funny that it wasn't going to be on there till you rewatched it. I like that.
And Kofi, you mentioned Kofi, in 2019, I mean, he ends up getting a WrestleMania World Title match. And it's because Ali gets hurt and this Kofi Mania thing catches on. But in retrospect, how cool would it have been?
Yeah.
The Rumble that year. That would have been the year to do it.
It would have been the year to do it. Would have been awesome, but wasn't meant to be. So top two here. Number two for me is one that neither one of us have mentioned so far. So it is on my list. 2007. So the year before 2008, I went with 2007. It is the best ending to a Royal Rumble ever. I don't think there's any argument there. It comes down to Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, who go on for like 10 minutes where they're the last two guys and have a freaking main event level match as the last two guys in the Royal Rumble. An epic moment where they're both down. Shawn kips up, Undertaker sits up, and it's this prelude into what their feud and their rivalry is going to become the next few years after this, going into WrestleMania. Then you got Undertaker winning, first guy to ever win from the number 30 spot. So that was pretty cool, pretty historic. Again, it's star-studded. It's got some fun stuff at the beginning. You got like 2001 had the hardcore section. This has an ECW section with all the, the ECW brand was still pretty new at that time. So you got those guys competing in the Royal Rumble for the first time in a very similar way. And really, I mean, it's there because of the ending. It's there because of the epic ending between Shawn and Taker. It's so good. It elevates it all the way to the number 2 spot for me.
Yeah, it's a really, I think even the final four with, I think they had a team KO in there. And it's really a fun match there. But for me, and I will say this, just harkening back to Taker and Shawn, that starts really a 4-year deal where it's like they give you a taste, and so that match becomes, we need this match. Like, we need this match. And then you go from there, and as you mentioned, they start the 2008 Royal Rumble, and then as they continue on, they finally get the 2 WrestleMania matches in 2009 and 2010. So much fun, such a great story that carried over for 4 years. Just loved it.
And I will say you didn't know who was going to win because Shawn goes on to have the other world title shot at WrestleMania. Undertaker faces Batista, Shawn faces Cena. So you had these two guys. It could have literally been either one of them winning there. So you are on the edge of your seat. You can't predict who's going to win. So I think that boosted up even more.
Oh, 100%. That's a great point, especially because you kind of knew Shawn had to be the guy for Cena.
Yeah.
So it was like you kind of figured that's where they were going to go. That's and what a fun, not to get too off track, but what a fun build to WrestleMania 23 there, with one of my favorite moments when Undertaker comes and
so good.
Batista challenges Batista. Shawn comes out, then he's ready to jump on Cena, and Vince McMahon then comes out and says, "Well, no one wanted Bobby Lashley, so I got the toughest in the whole ring." Really fun deal there. Number 2 for me. I think a lot of people probably expect what my top 2 here are going to be, but a little bit of a change here. Number 2 for me is the 2018 Men's Royal Rumble. Yeah.
Whoa.
This one, I know it's a little bit crazy, but this to me, I think one of the reasons I was so disappointed about not going to WrestleMania 34 was because of how incredible the Royal Rumble 2018 was, from a standpoint of you had 2 really good, well-done Royal Rumble matches. And this one starts off, everyone is so hot and so over. This one literally starts off with Aiden English clearing his throat, and the place just erupts. And they're ready to, this is the peak of Rusev Day. Out comes Rusev. Place is like so amped. Rusev's doing the Rusev Day. And he's just ready to go. Balor then comes out. Finn Balor lasts 57 minutes in this match. He looks like a total star. This match has everything you want in a Royal Rumble. You had Andrade Cien Almas come out following his 5-star match with Johnny Gargano, the first 5-star match WWE had in I don't know how long. Well, that's also, because of the Dave Meltzer bias, you could say. But
it was a great match, though.
It was a great match. Yeah. So they have this amazing match, and the crowd's so amped for him. So he comes out. You have Adam Cole make an appearance right after his great match with Aleister Black. You also have a great moment there where Heath Slater can't make it to the ring. Everyone who comes out just kicks him, knocks him out, beats him up.
I forgot about that.
Sheamus comes in, throws Heath Slater into the ring. He gets in the ring. Heath knocks him out, and the place erupts.
It was awesome.
And just like everything from that to Elias strumming the guitar and the place erupting, it's like this felt like such a hot period for WWE. And then you had a couple of fun returns. You had the Hurricane coming out here, and then you had Rey Mysterio. And I don't think anybody thought Rey Mysterio was not only coming back, but going to be back in WWE full time after this. So him coming out got a huge reaction. And then you get down to, you have Cena come out, and there's this great moment where he comes out and everybody beats him down. Just immediately everyone stops, just beats down Cena. And you have this great moment where it's everyone from the Ruthless Aggression era going up against the new era. And so it's Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, and John Cena on one side. And then on the other side, Roman Reigns, Finn Balor, and Shinsuke Nakamura on the other side. I think going in this, everyone kind of figured it was going to come down to Roman and Cena. But instead, it comes down to Roman, Cena, and Nakamura. And Nakamura gets past both of them en route to winning, and then immediately grabs the mic and says he wants AJ Styles at WrestleMania. It's amazing. It's such a great match. I know that it's not on everyone's top 10, but I really love this match. I think it was just great.
I think you made a great case for it. It is it was in consideration for my top 10. I will say that. Yeah. I definitely considered it. I definitely have a bias and more nostalgia for, older times. But I love that moment at the end where it's the Ruthless Aggression versus the modern era face-off. I thought that was so cool. I remember that watching that and being hyped for it. And I think, just talking it out now, I think ultimately why this doesn't make my top 10, which I guess maybe I shouldn't consider this, but I do, is the fact that Nakamura didn't end up winning at WrestleMania. And if he had won at WrestleMania after this Royal Rumble, if he had won the world title, if they had made him, a top guy after this, I think I would look back on this Rumble a little bit more fondly. But just being disappointed that he didn't actually get the win over AJ, I think they absolutely could have. I'm kind of still salty that they didn't, give him a shot, even just for a couple months with the title. I think this one would rank a little bit higher for me, but man, you make a great case for it, and I can totally see why it ranks number 2 for you.
Yeah, it's one of these things where that's a really great point, and it was one of the things I was thinking about where, like, 10 years from now, I wonder if this is even in my top 10 because the fact that Nakamura doesn't really amount to anything. Like, he's the one guy who's won a Rumble where even if you go through every Rumble winner now, you can probably get through most of them. And then when you get to 2018, you probably go, who won the Men's Rumble? And oh, wow, it was Shinsuke Nakamura. Like, I think he'll end up, unfortunately, becoming the forgotten winner because of the fact that he just didn't come out and didn't win. And they had every opportunity to do it. I mean, I got married 3 months after the Rumble in 2018, and we hired a violinist to play Shinsuke's theme for us and entered into our reception. That's how much we love Shinsuke Nakamura, and I don't understand why he goes into WrestleMania and doesn't. It makes no sense why they didn't give him the win there.
Yeah, it was cool. Him and Asuka winning the same year, this Japanese takeover, and neither of them win at WrestleMania. It was just such a bummer.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I love it. I love that we got that difference in our list there. So another difference for us. You had this one at your number 4, my number 1. It's obvious.
But before we get to number 1,
okay,
are there any honorable mentions?
Sure.
Ones that were real close for you that you ended up not putting in your top 10.
Okay. I said the 2018 women's earlier was close to making mine. If a women's match would have made the top 10, it would have been that one. Sentimentally, I love the 90 Rumble. I actually rewatched this one to see if I could make it on the list. There's just too many dead spots in there, but there's a awesome moment where Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior face off alone in the ring before WrestleMania 6, and they just the crowd is electric for that, and that's an awesome moment. I love the 2000 Royal Rumble. I think it's very fun, but it's another one where there's just like not enough star power in there, really. The Rock's winning the whole way through. But you got that great moment where Too Cool's dancing and Rikishi tosses Scotty 2 Hotty and Grandmaster Sexay out. A very fun Royal Rumble. That was close to me. And then the 98 Royal Rumble, again, is very fun. Stone Cold winning is awesome. The Three Faces of Foley coming in are awesome, but just overall, again, not enough star power. There's definitely some moments in there where it's just really slows down in there. So it didn't quite make the top 10 for me.
Yeah. I think for me, the one that I think a lot of people would be surprised didn't make my top 10 was actually the 2007 Royal Rumble. I think it's on every person's top 10 because of the incredible ending. As we're getting a surprise Royal Rumble running as we speak here on the side there.
Do you need to pause?
No. It's
okay.
But I really thought for sure, because there's nothing she enjoys more than jumping on the screen saying. But that one was the one for me. It was on my list all the way through until I watched 2001, and 2001 ended up bumping it out. But yeah, I mean, a great Royal Rumble. I agree with all the other ones you had said too about being sentimental favorites. I think honestly, I really enjoyed the 2005 Royal Rumble.
It's fun.
Where they do the West Side Story type build. It ends up with Vince McMahon coming in and tearing both of his quads. That one's a really fun one. Well, but at the end of the day, I guess my last question would be, if you can go back in time and choose one guy to win the Royal Rumble who didn't win in a particular year.
Wow.
Any of them that come to mind? And if you want, I could start because I kind of knew my answer.
Well, I'll just say the first one that comes to mind immediately when you say that would be Daniel Bryan, probably in take your pick, 14 or 15, honestly. Yeah. I mean, the crowd wanted it both of those years. Would have made more sense for 14. But, in a way, it almost worked out better that he didn't because, it becomes more organic the way that he gets in there. He gets the chance to beat Triple H and Batista and Randy Orton all in the same night. So it's almost a better story that he didn't do it. But at the time, it was just like, you're just so mad that they didn't even put him in the Royal Rumble in 14. And then in 15, it seems so obvious that, God, put him back at the top of the card. But no, they got to go with Roman Reigns. So those are the two that come to mind when you first asked that question.
I'm worried about Cody for similar types. When I think back to 2015 Daniel Bryan, they announced 2015 Daniel Bryan and he doesn't win. And I'm like, I feel like if they announce Cody and he doesn't win, I do think he is. I think he's going to win. But I think if he doesn't win, I wonder if the crowd turns a little bit on whomever does win. But that being said, I do think with Cody coming back, it's probably because they have a bigger surprise lined up. And I do think if that surprise ends up being either Big E or Randy Orton, who are both like rumored to never be returning, and one of those guys were to win, I think that people would be into that too.
Yeah, it's they're in a really interesting spot. I'm definitely intrigued more than I have been in a long time going into this Rumble because, what do you end up doing with Roman? Is it gonna be Rock or do they go with Cody? Do they go with Sami Zayn? Are we going to see Roman on both nights? Are they going to do something? It's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. And the fact that both of the belts are tied up with Roman, kind of paints them into a box. But I feel like WWE often does their best booking when they're kind of backed into a corner and they got to come up with a creative way out of it. So I'm very intrigued to see how the next few months go.
The only thing I don't want, and I'm worried they're going to do it, is a double finish. Because so many times it makes sense for them to do a double finish. Both guys land, feet go down first. Yeah. Roman versus one of them for one title night one. Roman versus one of them night two.
I could see that.
That I could definitely see happening. But
yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, so now we get to your number one greatest Royal Rumble of all time. What is that one for you?
Well, I started to say it, so I spoiled it already, but it is the 92 Rumble for me. And I know that's the obvious pick. That's, the consensus number one for, I'd say, the majority of the wrestling community. And it's one of the few times that I do agree that I think the consensus is correct. I think it is just perfection from top to bottom when you go back and watch it. It's probably the wrestling match that I've seen the most and rewatched the most in my entire life, honestly, because it is so fun to throw on and watch, because the commentary from Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan is so iconic. Everything that Matt Stryker takes away from the 2010 Royal Rumble. Gorilla and Bobby add to this one. It's so good that they put this entire match on Bobby the Brain Heenan's DVD because they put an hour-long match on his DVD just to showcase how great his commentary is in this match. That's how good it is. The star power, there's no better star power in any Royal Rumble in history when you got just legends from every era up until this point and future legends like Undertaker before he really takes off and becomes a star. Although he had been champion, a couple months before this, but, he's in this match. Flair, all Flair's rivals through the ages, like Roddy Piper, Kerry Von Erich as the Texas Tornado in there, getting to have a moment with Flair, Hogan, Savage, everybody is in there. Every 2 minutes is just somebody else awesome and just another awesome moment. It never dies. It never dwindles. And you mentioned that Flair DVD that came out around whenever it was, 2006, 2007 or something, that had this match on there. I have a very specific memory with that. I was a summer camp counselor for our church youth camp, and me and a few of the other counselors, we drove up early a couple days before the camp was to start. We were going to help get everything set up at the campsite that week, and it was me and a couple other college guys and then some older guys, like 40 to 50-year-old guys. We were driving in a minivan on the way up there, and the minivan had a DVD player in there. And so I brought the Ric Flair DVD, and I was the hardcore wrestling fan. Everybody else there, had watched wrestling from time to time. They weren't really hardcore fans, but I just threw that Ric Flair Rumble 92 there in the DVD player, and as the match went on, every person in that car was just like cheering and yelling. Even the guy driving the car, not really a wrestling fan, he's like leaning back to look at the TV while he's driving the car, just like, oh no, oh gosh, because it's so exciting. It was such a great story told. It could suck even them in, and I'll never forget how excited everybody was watching that. And I think that just goes to show you what a great match it is. So to me, that will be pretty hard to not always and forever be the greatest Royal Rumble.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are definitely calling me every name in the book for putting it down below the 2000.
No. You made your case for it, and I think that's what's awesome. I think that's what's fun, that it wasn't, us with the same thing coming in here. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's definitely a great Royal Rumble match. I think one of the things that's really cool about it is it's the first time, well, I'd say probably the second time. First time's probably actually Survivor Series 91, where you started to see people like really excited that Hulk Hogan lost.
Right.
Thrown out at Rumble 92. There's a lot of people like, oh my gosh, they just eliminated Hulk Hogan. Goodness gracious, he's gone, and like jumping up and down. And I think they even had edited the cheering out, but you still see because they didn't want that to be on the DVDs or the tapes. But you do still see people jumping up and down and just so happy. That was really cool. All right, my number one, I don't think it's too much of a surprise at this stage. It is one that I watched, and honestly, I don't know that it's the best Royal Rumble match, but I think for me, it just holds such a place because it is the first one I attended live. It is the 2008 Royal Rumble match, and it is a match that went back and watched. I think for me, you got the continuation of the 2007, as you said. I guess I'll even backtrack. Before that had started, the WWE that year actually was doing Access on the road. So every stop they went to, they were doing WrestleMania Access leading up to WrestleMania Access at WrestleMania 24, I guess it was. So we went to Access all week long. Got to see all these different people. First time I met Ric Flair was at this show. He didn't acknowledge my existence at all. He just, continued to. Actually, the second time I saw him also as a SummerSlam 2007. So I've seen him twice. He's never once even looked at me. He's just gone through, or he's chatting with somebody else, and so.
That's why you don't like the 92 Rumble right there.
Maybe that is why. But didn't have tickets to that show. Ended up going to the venue, and they released tickets at the last second. I didn't have money to buy them, so I had to go home. And so I got all the way back through Penn Station onto the train. called my parents, told them to order the show. And then at that last second, while I'm on the train before the doors close, my buddy calls and says that his girlfriend bought me a ticket and to come back. And so my parents, I don't even call them to tell them to cancel the order because I was so excited. They watched the Rumble at home. So excited because now we're in this moment where we got to be there.
Yeah.
Great moment when we're on the line there where my buddy Steve walks by and kind of gawks at us because he has tickets and goes, hey, best of luck getting tickets, like as if we weren't going to get them. So then we got there and our seats were in front of him, so we were even happier for that moment. And yeah,
screw you, Steve.
Yeah, screw you, Steve. We looked up and we were like, doing the suckets and all that from where our seats were. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredible moment. Being there in Madison Square Garden, it starts, as you mentioned, with Michael Buffer, introduces Undertaker, and he doesn't introduce Shawn Michaels. If you go back, he goes, HBK, the Heartbreak Kid, and never even says Shawn Michaels' name. Like, I don't know why he didn't introduce him as Shawn Michaels, but it was just so interesting to see that. I love that we got the Taker entrance. It's probably the first time we got full Undertaker entrance at Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. And I mean, then from there, and you got to see those guys go at each other for about halfway through and interact with guys they never wrestled with before, like CM Punk, ECW CM Punk going up against Undertaker, John Morrison going up against Shawn Michaels, all these random mix and match type guys. You mentioned the Roddy Piper and Jimmy Snuka back to back, which was great. But then you also had a brief moment there where Mick Foley's in the ring, which was in there, and they fisticuffs start going through at each other, and then Triple H tosses them. But it really is just a great, great match. And then at the end, I remember my friends and I 100% thought Triple H was going to win, and then we're ready as number 30 happens because the big rumor is the Big Show's returning. So we have the hand ready to go with the Big Show's music, and then Cena's music hits, and there's no hint that he's coming back. There's nothing. He's out for a year.
Nothing.
So he comes out, and he does the coolest takeoff of his shirt that he does make famous, where he grabs it from under here and somehow does the whole thing. I certainly won't try to do it here for anybody who's watching, but from at that moment on, that is the way I try to take off my shirt at the beach.
Absolutely. Every time.
He was awesome. And you just see the crowd, as you mentioned, everybody they hate the guy, but they forget they hate him. And I think there's this moment of like the great ending where it comes down to him, Batista, Triple H. Batista hits them both with the thumbs down. Cena does the "you can't see me," and then Hunter gives them both the suck it, and the crowd just eats it up. And that is why it is number one on my list for the greatest Royal Rumble match of all time.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. You know, it's 92 for me, but 2008 certainly makes that case. And that's a match that got me back into wrestling after the Chris Benoit incidents in 2007. And I kind of, fell in love of wrestling for about a year. But I remember I was summer of 2008. I'd come down with this real bad stomach virus, and I was just like out of commission for like a week and just couldn't do anything except, sit in bed and watch TV. And I remember I somehow like stumbled out to the video store and was walking around there at Blockbuster, and I was just like, I just want to watch some wrestling. It's just comforting. I just want to grab something, and I grabbed Royal Rumble 2008. I had never seen it before. I was like, okay, I'll watch this, and took it back to the house. And I remember it was such an awesome moment, awesome match all the way through. And I was like, I still love wrestling. I got to get back into it. I got to get back into watching it again, and started watching Raw and getting back into things after that. And it's a perfect moment. One of the greatest surprise, the greatest comeback in Royal Rumble history for sure. So I totally respect that as a number one pick.
Well, and for me, and I always like to josh my buddy Steve. He is the biggest John Cena hater on the planet. He stopped watching because of John Cena's run on top of WWE. And so one of the things when we had asked him when he was walking in, who do you want to win the Rumble? He said, you know what? I'm cool with anyone winning because at least I know it won't be John Cena. When Cena returned, we all looked at him and he was just head in his hands, could not believe that Cena was back. But that, I think that moment was so great that it's now led to there's got to be a surprise every year at the Rumble from that one, because it was the most surprising and biggest shock return they'd ever done.
Yeah, it's almost a curse in a way that they feel like they have to do that and try to match up to it. And occasionally they do, like both of Edge's comebacks, I think they stand right up there with that, but a lot of times they don't. And man, just imagine, I don't think this match would rank on either of our lists if a Big Show had been number 30 versus John Cena, like you said.
And we were so sure, like the smartest of the smart fans, we know he's coming. It's going to be the Big Show. And then it's John Cena. And I'll never forget my friend. I mean, he's Mr. The guy I was with at the show, Mr. Just let me boo all the baby faces, cheer for all the heels, make everyone in the crowd hate me. And he and I leaping for joy, huge hugs because John Cena was back. It's like everyone did. They forgot that they hated the guy so much. And just a really, really, really fun show, and a great, it's what makes the Royal Rumble so special, I think, is when you get one that is just so surprising and so great like that. Exactly.
That unpredictability is what truly makes it. You never know what's going to happen. So very cool, man. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us here. I had asked Alex when I initially had presented this idea of you coming back in a few months to talk about the 5-year anniversary of WrestleMania 34, a show you were at, and I was not at, and I will explain why I did not make that show as a little cliffhanger there, but look forward to having you come back, Alex. This has been great.
Absolutely. I'll be here. Whenever you want to do it, I'm ready for it. Fun show to be at. I'll be happy to talk about that one, and appreciate you having me on here tonight.
Absolutely. Is there a tease you can give us for your next episode of Talking Taker?
Yeah, so in case you don't know, Talking Taker podcast, it's available, wherever you listen to podcasts. Also available here on YouTube as well. You can see the full video versions of me and Travis digging up the dead man. Like I said, we come out once a month now. We are available. We come out with a new episode on the 1st of every month. So we'll be back on February 1st with a new episode. You can go back in the archives and hear a couple episodes with Tommy here joining us back in our archives. Our archives are totally free. Every episode is up there. Over 200 episodes of Talking Taker up there. And February 1st, we are going to be coming out with the complete history of the casket match. So Travis and I are going to look into the evolution of the casket match from the very first ones that were televised in WWE, even a couple or one that was took place not in WWE. That was the origin of the casket match. So all of Undertaker's, all of the other wrestlers, not the Undertaker, who competed in casket matches in WWE. We'll talk about ones that happened in other companies like TNA and AEW as well. It's going to be very fun to chart that evolution of the Undertaker's signature match. So look out for that on February 1st. And just give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Talking Taker, and keep up with what we're doing. We would greatly appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that Alex and Travis do a great job with too is continuing to track all of the appearances of the Undertaker that happened between each one of their episodes, whether it be Undertaker on College Game Day or Alex actually went to the first ever Undertaker One Dead Man Live show prior to SummerSlam over SummerSlam 2022 weekend. So highly recommend checking that out. And thank you again, Alex, for joining us here on Watch Along Wrestling. And we hope everyone enjoyed the Royal Rumble. Let us know what your favorite Royal Rumble was of all time in the comment section. Let us know where we were wrong, even if it was the men's 2018 Royal Rumble.
That was great.
Thank you again. And I hope everyone does enjoy the Royal Rumble 2023. Maybe it'll be in our top 10 next time we do this.
Could be.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much. And we'll see you guys in the next video.